Alright, so this is me writing my story number 2. So far, I've established the kind of like some of the main drive, the main goal of the group. The I've had repeated discussions amongst the characters about, well, who are they? What are they doing? I've also had the first dissenter from the group, and as a result, the leader has decided what to do. But of course, if you remove one dissenter, you got to have another one. And the reason why is because you always need to have some sort of tension, some sort of stress and struggle going on amongst the group. Ideally, a good story is there's always going to be tension. There's always going to be stress. There's always going to be something that the characters are working with or against, and that they need to overcome. Um, so that's that. The body count so far is about 30, I want to say, and just expect it to get higher and higher. I'm rereading it, and I'm thinking to myself that, it seems a little much what they're going into, but that's where I throw in that time has passed. A lot of time has passed. So I've ended at the year mark, and I decided to reread, see what I've done, and other than little just writing mistakes here and there, I'm pretty satisfied with my work and how it's come out. Um, so far, I just need to. But the other aspect is that I feel that I've really included a lot of reread material. So that's what I'm hoping for in the book as well. Ideally, when you read this, and I think anybody who picks it up and they read it once, like, okay, that was interesting, years later, or they may pick it up towards the end, like, oh, wait a minute, because what I'm doing is I'm using magic as a sort of form of internet, a form of technology. Um, it's going to get to the point where these guys are using magic kind of like you would use a cell phone, like you'd use the internet, like you would use technology today. And I figure that that's actually a very good way to interpret it, to use it. Since these guys are a militant group, they would use magic like a military would, for surveillance, for communication, for protection, and safety. So I think that that will be a very effective means. Ultimately, the goal of my book is, it's in a way kind of a interpretation of teenage life, especially in this time and day and age. And you're going to have these different elements going through it, such as violence, uh, problems teenagers face, problems that, or things that teenagers want. How are they getting what they desire? How would they normally get what they desire? How do people outside of the group, how do they interpret their behavior? That's going to be other elements I'm going to throw in there. So I need to start. A lot of I've been focusing a lot on the other world. I need to focus a bit more now on Earth and the characters' interactions there. But that may come in later, because right now these guys are going into their sophomore year, and so in theory they're still going to be in year-round schedule. So every 3 months they're going off to Adrena. They're going off to this other world and they're fighting it out. Um, but once, but after that they're going to get into the regular normal school schedule, and because of that they'll have more time that they can spend on Adrena to fight, and because of that they'll be able to participate in longer and more brutal campaigns. The result is, of course, so higher body counts, more that's expected, and uh, that they're going to come across. And on top of that, the more sort of escalating conflicts and combats that they can encounter. The end result is that they're just they're going to end up achieving greater and greater success. But ideally, I want to have to write it in such a way that, well, it's because of the way they do it. That's so it's a little easy, but it's just because they understand what tools they have at their disposal. and they understand what their opponents are capable of doing. So, I have to make it, appear legitimate and make the reader, realize and agree with how the story is going, and that, I can totally understand how these guys are able to achieve that. They understand themselves, they understand their opponent. Ideally, that's how I'm going to have all of my writing, is a sort of, the main character is as bland as possible, and that's so that the reader can more identify with the main character. They can more see themselves in that position. And as a result, the thought process which I present, and the idea that there is no obstacle too great that you can't overcome, or there is no goal that you can't achieve, is there. Now, something else is that I have to write in more struggle. I have to write in more challenge to behavior, challenge to actions, and challenges to desires. And because that's part of good writing. That you have a struggle, you have something that the character is always working against. So there has to be the challenge within the group. There has to be dissent. There has to be other challenges that are just present in the environment. So that's what I have to think about and incorporate as well. So very interesting, unique aspect of it all is that here it is their second year. They're increasing their number of people. They're achieving more and more success, but the struggle is only intensifying. The challenge facing them is only increasing, and as a result, they have to really band together and really realize what they're doing and what they're capable of. So, the real challenge. Luckily, I have planned out the whole story beforehand, so I know what's going to happen at each beat, you could say. But I know what each chapter is going to incorporate, and that's really helping me and really especially in keeping track of different sort of events, and really making me realize that, well, these things have to be achieved. So as I've laid out the story, I've laid out the outline of the story, and because of that, I have to get from point A to point B, which in my opinion is a good writing tool to use. That you have to start out the chapter and think about, okay, well, they're at this point, so how are they going to get to this point? How are they going to get to this place? And for me, the writing challenge is also that, well, I have to incorporate this opposition. I have to incorporate the fact that there's going to be people who don't totally agree with the characters, the main character, the people and what they want and are involved in. There are ancillary characters. There's people on the fringes, in the background, who, if they don't mean anything, they don't mean anything. They're more or less props that you can use, or that can be used, especially by the characters, and that's understood. You don't give something personality unless it needs personality. Case in point of writing, and especially like we look at Star Wars. What makes a character? A character is basically more than the sum of their parts. So the droids are characters. Why? Because if you took them apart, then they wouldn't. They're not a character anymore. They don't function in the same way. But as a single piece, they are able to do more. They're able to operate more, and so that's why they're a character. Like you could say the same with Millennium Falcon. So always something to keep in mind. But yeah, if you're reading along, that's what to expect. Just a lot more bloodshed. So, but at the same time, I have to also write in the drawbacks of violence and bloodshed. There has to be the consequence of killing. And so also there's going to be, when these guys are, drinking, there's a consequence of drinking. So that's, because there has to be moral.